Welcome again to CASA's May Maintenance Month Toolbox Talks. In our previous two sessions, we've looked at certification and inspection. These are the formal defences that are built into maintenance work the world over. In this session, however, we're actually going to be stepping inside something less formal, but certainly equally as important, and that is decision making. Maintenance decisions are rarely made in isolation or in ideal conditions. That's just the reality of the work that we do. They're made in real time, often with incomplete information, experience to draw on, and often judgment filling any gaps. Today is about how we make those decisions, how they're actually made, not specifically whether they're right or wrong, but how engineers reach conclusions when they're in the moment. I'm joined once again by my good colleague, Peter Ball, who's an experienced licensed aircraft maintenance engineer, and he's one of my fellow aviation safety advisors here at CASA. And Pete, of course, brings a wealth of experience from aircraft, both large and small, and has certainly used to in his career in making complex maintenance decisions as a part of his normal work. Welcome along today, Pete. Good to see you once again. Alrighty, so let's talk about decision making versus ironclad procedures in the maintenance world. So, Pete, of course, procedures and manuals certainly do matter. They are the roadmap with which we get things done in maintenance, but they don't make decisions on their own. So where does decision making actually sit alongside these procedures in our everyday maintenance work?
Well, let's divide it in half, and we'll talk first of all about scheduled maintenance, and then we'll talk about unscheduled maintenance, such as defects and defect rectification, that sort of thing. So in the scheduled maintenance world, there's generally sufficient time allocated to the task, and it's almost as if decision making isn't thought about to a great degree. It kind of follows, the worksheets, the check sheets, those sorts of things. And the decision making is it's there, but it's in the background. It's fairly subtle because there's a routine involved and it's fairly standardized, and the documentation is there, the aircraft maintenance manuals are there, all those sorts of things. So in that environment, it usually comes down to any additional tasks that are required, any defects that might have been on the maintenance release, deferred as it came into maintenance, then the decision making around those, when they're going to occur, who's going to action them, are there parts required, ensuring people are advised that the time required might be more. So in that aspect, the decision making is generally fairly, considered because of the amount of time. I guess where decision making becomes more crucial is when the aircraft's on the line and there's an unscheduled downtime defect for the aircraft. The schedule is still in place and they're hoping to get the plan back on track. And, often you don't know how long it's going to take to fix because, you got to find out what's wrong first. But with the decision making, you really do need to be considered, even though there's time pressure put on top, you need to consider whether I've got the parts, I've got the facility, I've got the manpower, I've got the data, I've got everything I need to resolve this. If I don't, I need to make sure that I ask for help and don't labour in isolation and feel like it's the weight of the world is on me. So that's what I would say in that particular instance. Let's make sure we have everything we need prior to proceeding and making a decision as to which way we're going to go.
Yeah, so decision making, would I be correct in saying, Pete, that it really comes to the fore when it's something unscheduled or something unexpected, or when you're dealing with ambiguity?
Absolutely, Tim. You need to be sure of the direction that you need to go in prior to committing to that. And that, as I said, this is a variety of aspects that need to be considered prior to going down that path. If there is ambiguity still in evidence prior to you making a decision of which way to go, then talk to the aircraft owner, talk to the maintenance controller, talk to whoever you need to talk to get enough information to make an informed decision about the path that you need to go down to resolve that particular issue.
And like any type of decision making, the whole concept of experience plays a huge role, both on the hangar floor and also in the cockpit for pilots as well. So really, we can lean on our past experience and also the experience of others as a legitimate decision-making tool. So experience is often talked about as a protection in many respects. So how does experience actually influence our decision-making in the moment?
Looking at it from a lack of experience perspective, say we're talking about a brand new licensed aircraft maintenance engineer, there's no guarantee that they know everything about that aircraft. It's happens quite often, especially in a more complex aircraft. You might never work on a particular part of it or not have seen that particular part worked on, but you've got the experience and the qualification and the license to do so. And in that case, you need to make sure you're fully informed prior to moving on. So don't assume just because I'm a lamey and I've got the license, then I can go down that path and work on that aspect. So talk to whoever you need to talk to, phone a friend, talk to the aircraft manufacturer, talk to your technical services team, whoever you've got that might have the experience in that area to try and decode what you might need to know. And I guess the flip side to that is for the really experienced layman who's probably seen most of it, if not all of it, then they can very easily fall into the trap of complacency. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. We just go and do A, B, C, D, and it'll be fine. However, in this particular instance, it might present as the same defect, but it could be something different, presenting those same systems in a different way, or sorry, in the same way, but be a different or related system that's actually causing the fault. So certainly just taking time to consider, the knowledge that you have and asking yourself, what don't I know? And make that fully informed decision before proceeding.
Experience certainly is a very, very powerful decision-making tool in the maintenance world. And for those in the industry that don't have a lot of experience, then there's nothing wrong with leaning on those with greater experience around you to help you come to a conclusion. And just asking the question, Pete, for example, does this look normal?
Yeah, absolutely. Asking yourself those questions and even discussing it with other people, even if you can't access, a lamey that is rated and experienced on that aircraft, just discussing it with someone else. It might be a lamey that's not type rated on that aircraft, or an AMI, or the pilot, or the aircraft owner. Talk it through, step it through in your own mind, and make sure you're using logical steps to reach that conclusion and not jumping to conclusions, or we're still trying to look better than you really are, and going down the wrong path. And you could potentially change very expensive components that don't need changing and unnecessarily have that aircraft on the ground and incur costs to your employer or the aircraft owner as well.
Just like in the flying environment, usually the best quality decisions come from the best quality information and resources that you have available. Um, I want to talk about decision making that sometimes we claim is, in inverted commas, good enough. Um, Not every decision, of course, might aim for a perfect answer, Pete. So, how often is decision making more about finding an answer that's good enough to manage risk?
Yeah, that's an interesting point because really good enough or close enough isn't ideal in the aviation industry because as we know, the consequences of it not being good enough can be quite severe. So yeah, absolutely. I've been in situations where I've been working, right at the end of a supply line. It could be a remote rescue where I didn't have access to facilities and tooling and data and personnel, or even power, basic things you take for granted in the hangar environment. But when you're working, remotely, it becomes a challenge. Hopefully, organisations won't throw their least experienced people into that scenario because that's when you need not just the lamey, not just the type rated or experienced on that, but plenty of broad experience as well to be able to cope in that environment. So yeah, I would certainly caution against hastening into an ill-informed or lack of information decision to just get the job done or get the aircraft home, because there's always people to consider here, whether they are the pilots, the owner of the aircraft, the passengers, or the public, that are living underneath that aircraft. And making a split-second decision that it's good enough, that might be certainly the wrong decision. So taking due care and making sure that the decision you're making is valid and supported by logic and preferably data in the form of the aircraft maintenance manual or technical services advice, or could be service bulletins, or illustrated parts catalogs, whatever it is that you need to have access to. Certainly take that. And even in this current day where we have mobile phones, we can send pictures, we can receive documents and things like that. There's very rarely an excuse for not having access to that data. So yeah, take your time, ask for the help. As I said, phone a friend. Just keep escalating it until you're happy that the required outcome has been met safely and compliantly, and that you had access to any data that was available in making that decision.
100%, Pete. Decision making in the maintenance world is often a lot more complex with a lot more inputs than most people probably realise in our industry. Um, and as you alluded to, rescuing an aircraft out in the bush or remote from your normal resources, you certainly would it be true to say you have to go down that balancing act between being thorough and also being practical, and even considering the law of diminishing returns. At what standard do I need to achieve to make this aircraft safe to get it home? And there's a lot of pressure going on the lamy in such a situation.
Absolutely. I've been in some situations with, the weight of the entire organisation on me, especially contract type organisations. They're not just worried about that particular operation, but the continuation of the contract and even the renewal of the contract. And, it's very easy to impose all of that pressure on yourself and be rushed into making a choice that might not be suitable in that scenario. But certainly, when you're working in isolation and at the end of a very long distance away from home base, that sort of thing, sometimes you need to make an informed decision, but it certainly needs to be safe and compliant as well prior to signing that aircraft out into service.
And as we alluded to in our Toolbox talk at the start of this series that looked at certification, at the end of the day, of course, it is your license, and that you're putting your name to something to certify it as airworthy. Pete, because we're all human, we often have to balance, our own self-confidence in our job versus sometimes that nagging doubt that just eats away at the back of our head. So when making maintenance decisions, how do we sometimes balance or those competing emotions of confidence and doubt?
Yeah, I would certainly say, look, just take your time, take a step back, isolate yourself from what's going on, and think it through. Imagine that you're putting your own family on that aircraft, and that can sometimes give you some context as to how you feel about it. I've been in situations where the owners of the aircraft and the people flying the aircraft, they just telling you that they don't care. Let's just go. Let's just get it done. Just sign it out. We'll figure it out later. But as we know from aviation, it's terribly unforgiving of any misadventure or shortcuts and things like that. They can very easily turn a seemingly good day into a nightmare. So yeah, managing that is difficult, but that's part of being a lamey. It's not always an easy job. Sometimes it's a thankless job. You can be very easily isolated by the people around you for not making a decision. But look, as I've said in the other episodes, lamies are not just paid to say yes and certify. they are paid to say no and not certify when the system or the aircraft or the airworthiness is in question of that particular aircraft. But you do need to be able to justify that decision. You can't just make it on a whim. It has to be supported by data and experience, logic, knowledge, all those sorts of things. And when you make that engineering call, it needs to have some basis in fact. It can't just be on a whim. I just don't feel like certifying it today, so I'm not going to. It's not happening. So yes, you have to have that foundation to make that decision before you do so.
As we wrap up our quick chat today on decision making, Pete, often at the moment that a decision is made, it usually feels quite coherent. You're convinced that, yes, this is the way to go. And later on, if we are mature and disciplined enough to review our decision making, sometimes they can look actually a bit different to what we perhaps first thought those decisions were. So without getting into outcomes, what actually changes, or what can change when you look back at a decision? And perhaps more importantly, how vital is it to perhaps after an event go back and review your decision making?
I think that's very important, and that's the mark of a true professional, is to always have that little bit of doubt in the back of your mind. If we all operated with 100% confidence and bravado, and rushing through it and just telling everyone to keep up and that sort of thing, that's not a good situation to be in. It sets an unrealistic expectation upon people that that's what you're going to do every time. But certainly, I have had times where I've reviewed prior decisions in the cold light of day, maybe after a night shift, and all I wanted to do is get out of there and get home and go to bed, and then you wonder about how things were, and you might I've actually reversed a decision after the fact. In the cold light of day, rang up, said, no, let's put that aircraft on the ground, let's go and check XYZ. It was all fine, but it was just that nagging self-doubt, just to go back and double check one more time. But certainly, when you're working night shifts, you're out of your sleep pattern. You're probably, fatigued. You could be even, acutely fatigued or chronically fatigued. That can certainly play a big part of your decision-making capabilities. And, after a good sleep, you're thinking things through and it's going, geez, if I had my time again, I probably wouldn't do that. But that then feeds into your experience to make better decisions down the track as well.
Yeah, that's a great way of approaching it, Pete. And again, it's a very dynamic environment. And what has come through clearly through our discussion today is that decision making in the maintenance world it's not about rule breaking or taking shortcuts or anything like that. It's trying to make sense of what's actually in front of you at the time, and you use your experience, you use your judgment and all the available information that you have available to you to hopefully arrive at an answer that is workable and is safe, of course. It's been great chatting, Pete. These types of sessions, I hope people are finding invaluable to take their safety in the maintenance world to that next level, because we're only human, but we're all learning. And in our upcoming final Toolbox talk, we'll look at actually what happens when decisions like these are perhaps examined after an occurrence. It might be an air return, a ground return, it might be an accident or an incident, and how we can preserve the context in which those decisions were made, or lost in that process. So, Pete, thanks so much for walking us through this today as to how decisions can be made in that maintenance context. It's incredibly important information, and we certainly thank you for once again being happy to share your experience.
Thanks, Tim. My pleasure.